Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 11th, 2026 edition of Douglas Now Live. I'm Robert Preston Jr., live in the Douglas Now studios. I apologize for the late hour at which we are meeting here tonight. It was not my plan to do this late, but it never is. But sometimes things get in the way. I was working on a couple of stories earlier tonight, and I want to share some of that with you. You know that I like to do things a little differently. If you watch a traditional news broadcast, which this is not, a traditional news broadcast, and it's not designed to be that way. But one of the things that they usually do sports toward the end. Well, I like to do sports at the beginning because, again, usually you're talking about happier topics when it comes to sports. And we have some teams that are playing right now. Of course, primarily it's softball. We had two softball games here in Douglas and Coffee County this afternoon. The Lady Trojans and the CCA Lady Patriots were playing today. Of course, they were not playing each other. The Lady Trojans were facing the Ware County Gators. We are not in the same classification as Ware County anymore, but that does not mean that it is any less of a rivalry game. Anytime Coffee and Ware play each other, doesn't matter the circumstances, doesn't matter the sport, it's going to be a very hard-fought contest with a lot of emotions on both sides. The Lady Patriots were in action about the same time across town. It was a historic night for CCA. We will talk about that here in just a minute. But first, I want to lead off, pun very much intended, with the Lady Trojans. Coffee defeated Ware County 8-0 today in a run rule shortened game at Faircloth Field. Again, Ware County was the opponent. Jocelyn Fender, who was pictured here, and this is not from today's game. This is from a game last week. But Jocelyn Fender was a double away from the cycle. Now, she got 3 at bats. She was 3 for 3 with a triple, a single, and a home run. So she never had the opportunity to go for that double, but it's still pretty cool to think about that. You know, the hardest part about hitting for the cycle is not the home run, it's the triple. All right. So you don't hit very many triples. Doesn't matter if it's baseball, doesn't matter if it's softball. You don't hit very many triples at all. All right. Well, she got a triple in the first inning, an RBI triple at that. She actually drove in 4 runs. So she accounted for half of the Trojans run, Lady Trojans run total here today. She tripled down the right field line in the first, driving in 1. She homered in the third. That was a 2-run shot, I believe. And then she had an RBI single in the fourth. The game ended in the 5th inning via the 8-run run rule. Fender was 3 for 3 with 4 RBIs. Ella Edge, who has had a really good season so far as well, was 3 for 3 with 3 runs. Carly Douglas and Maggie Brown each had 2 hits. Allie Pridgeon, Edge, Douglas, and Brown all doubled. Brown threw a complete game 1-hitter, striking out 7 with no walks. We had 2 really good pitching performances here today. We're going to talk more about what happened across town at CCA. But Maggie Brown, who has been a phenomenal pitcher throughout her career, continued to play at the high level that she has during her career at Coffee High. Again, 7 strikeouts, no walks, 1 hit, no runs. This was the first win for Coffee. They're now 1-2 on the season. They get a week off. We don't play again until next Tuesday, but they're starting the region schedule early this year. It seems early. But we've only played 3 games, and now we're going to head up up I-75 to face Northside Warner Robins in Warner Robins. They will play 1 game next Tuesday. Then on Thursday, they will come back down here and play a doubleheader at home. So again, that's the 18th. They play in Warner Robins, and then on the 20th, they play here. That doubleheader will begin at 4 p.m. So got a week to get ready for the region schedule. We'll run through everybody. And then we'll take a break, play some non-region games, and then come back and play some more region, and then get a little bit of a break there at the end of the season as we prepare for the playoffs. So what happened over at Patriot Field, or maybe I should say Lady Patriot Field. CCA played its first game ever under the lights at home. If you have ridden by CCA this summer, you've seen that, of course, the baseball field got lights in the spring. While they were doing that, they added lights on the softball field and on the football field. Now, the football field had temporary lighting that worked okay, but not great. I can tell you from taking pictures out there that it was not easy to photograph at night at the football field. They had those for a couple of seasons. They finally got permanent lighting up, and it looks really good out there when the fields are lit up. And we're going to talk about this in just a second, but you're really going to see the CCA campus lit up on Friday night. They've got a lot going on there. But tonight, they were able to unveil the lights in an official capacity for the first time for softball. And you don't really understand how that opens up scheduling possibilities when we're when you have lighting. All right, most of the fields around here do. Okay, South Georgia State College softball field, I do not believe has lighting, but the baseball field does. Of course, most of Coffee High's facilities have lights as well. But you really take it for granted with how you have to schedule your games. And when you're looking at middle school and varsity playing on the same field, how all that factors in. You got to make sure you get those games in before it gets too dark. It's not as big of an issue this time of the year, but it gets crazy during the later fall after the time changes. When you lose that hour of daylight, it can get a little crazy. So it was a historic day for CCA. They were able to play under the lights for the first time in the history of the softball program. Now, we were mentioning good pitching performance over at Faircloth Field. There was an equally strong pitching performance over at Patriot Field today. Shanley Meeks threw a 3-inning, 40-pitch perfect game. CCA was hosting Tift Area Academy. They beat them 23-0 last week at their place. Today, they beat them 15-0 in what was CCA's home opener. So it was a historic day with regard to the lights, a very festive atmosphere over there on the CCA campus today. And then they capitalized by not just winning, but winning in rather spectacular fashion. They jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the first, and they added 2 in the second, and then broke the game open in the third inning with 10 runs to kick the 3-inning run rule into effect. They scored their 10 runs off of 12 hits. Emma Gorley, Allie Veal, Peyton Harper, Arabelle Roberts, and Meeks all had 2 hits apiece. Claire Mercer, Veal, and Harper drove in 2. Gorley scored 3, while Brylan Waldron, Veal, and Roberts scored 2 each. 2 of Gorley's hits were doubles, and Maddie Lewis added a double of her own. Again, Meeks threw 3 innings. Perfect game. Zeros across the stat sheet, except for the strikeout category or column where she had 8 strikeouts. So out of 15 total outs, she struck out 8. So over half of Tift Area's lineup struck out. The win improved the Lady Patriots to 5-1 on the season. They'll be back in action this weekend, all of which are here in town. This is what I was talking about a minute ago. So at 5 p.m., they face Brookwood on the CCA campus. At 7 p.m., they will play Southwest Georgia Academy. Now, Southwest Georgia that's a rivalry game, all right? They've had CCA and Southwest Georgia have had some big games in several different sports over the years. Those games are fun to watch, and there are heightened emotions when CCA and Southwest Georgia take the field or the court against each other. That game will be played at 7 p.m. Now, what's interesting is that the Patriots football team opens their season this weekend at 7:30 against Baker County. So you're going to have a football game going on under the lights at 7:30 p.m. You're going to have a softball game starting at 7 p.m. just a couple hundred yards away, if that, from football. So there's going to be a lot happening at CCA on Friday afternoon / Friday evening this weekend. The Lady Patriots will face Lanier County at 3:30 Saturday afternoon. That game will likely take place at the Premier Ports. I'm having a hard time talking tonight. The Premier Sports Complex over by Jardine Stadium. The Lady Patriots have 3 home games this weekend, and that Lanier game ought to be pretty good. Southwest Georgia Academy ought to be pretty good as well. So, and of course the football season, we're going to try to get a football preview done here in the next couple of days. It's going to be a lot of fun, again, with 2 football teams playing this year in Coffee County, both of which are playoff caliber teams. So at the end of the regular season, both the Coffee Trojans and the CCA Patriots ought to be in the postseason and ought to be poised to make a pretty good run. CCA's wide open this year. The 2 best teams in the state last year, the number 1 and number 2 team in the state champion and the runner-up, are out of 8-man football this year. They move up to play 11-man, so that leaves 8-man kind of wide open. And CCA has a pretty deep team this year with some solid senior leadership and a pretty good number of seniors, particularly for the size of the program that CCA has. So they're going to be in really good shape, and it's going to be really fun to watch them this year in their 3rd varsity season. Had a home playoff game last year, looking for something a little bit more this year. So again, and over here I picture we've got Arabelle Roberts and Brylan Waldron here, the only 2 seniors on the Lady Patriots team. So again, they're going to lose those 2 players, and they're really good. Right? It's going to be hard to fill their shoes next year, but they have some extremely good players coming up who are getting a lot of playing time. And again, Allie Veal's an 8th grader. She's already made an impact in the short time she's been with the Lady Patriots. So she's got 5 years with CCA. And that's one thing that's, an advantage of playing at a private school that you don't get at a public school, is 8th graders can play varsity. So you can get 5 years of varsity action if you're good enough. And we've seen several 8th graders make significant contributions at CCA over the years in several different sports. A little bit tougher in football. You don't want to run a 13 or 14-year-old out there against 18-year-olds. Every once in a while, you'll see an 8th grader able to get out on the football field and hold his own. But it happens fairly regularly with baseball, basketball, softball, sports like that. So anyway, it's shaping up already to be a pretty good fall sports season, and we're going to be getting more into it. Cross country is going to be starting up here pretty soon, so we're going to have a lot to write about and a lot to talk about with regard to athletics. But a good day today from the Lady Trojans and the Lady Patriots, both really talented teams. It's going to be a lot of fun following them this year. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the property tax or the property value assessments, which have everybody so happy in Coffee County. Can't wait to get into that. We'll be back in just a second. Looking for design, printing, or shipping solutions? Stop by PostNet in Douglas or Waycross today. From business cards to signs and all small business and personal print projects in between, we've got your back with our full-service printing capabilities. We offer custom packing and shipping options through UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service, so you can always choose what works best for you. When someone is injured in an accident, they need 3 things: answers, a plan, and a legal team they can trust. That's what you get at the law office of Bruce Edwards in Douglas, along with a healthy dose of old school toughness and modern strategy to boot. We are here to help. Give us a call and let us work for you. Welcome back. Robert Preston Jr. here live on the Douglas Now Facebook page. I want to make a correction to my softball wrap-up a minute ago. Said that Carly Douglas had a good day for the Coffee Lady Trojans. It is Canley Douglas. We've had too many Carlys and Canleys and Shanleys and everything else between our teams, so I apologize for that. Canley Douglas, not Carly Douglas. I told you I can't talk tonight for some reason. I don't know what's going on. I'm not that tired. I haven't had a long day, but here it is at 11 o'clock and we're struggling. Speaking of struggling, property valuation and assessments and so on and so forth has dominated the discussion here in Douglas and Coffee County lately. Now, let me explain that a little bit here. I am outside of my element trying to talk about this. All right. And people have asked me questions that I have very much been unable to answer. And a lot of other people have been unable to answer these questions. Now, when I go through what I'm about to tell you, I am not apologizing for the county. I am not taking up for the county. I am not speaking for the county. I am simply relating the information to you that has been told to me. If you have specific questions about how all this works, you can ask me, but I'm probably not going to be able to answer it. But a lot of people want to know why we're doing the reassessments now, what triggers it. And of course, we've got conspiracy theories and people wondering if the county's wanting to raise taxes, the county needs money. Of course, you get into some crazy mess with that. But ultimately, what happens here is this comes from the state. The county didn't sit around in a smoke-filled room and say, we need more money, so let's reassess our property values and let's do our best to make sure we reassess them, at twice what properties are valued at now. That's not what happened. You have folks at the state who watch this kind of thing, all right? And the way property taxes are figured is your property taxes are figured on about 40% of the value of a given piece of property, all right? So if you've got a $100,000 house, $100,000 piece of property, your taxes are going to be figured off of about $40,000 of that. Now, you're not going to get reassessed as long as property sells for close to the assessed value. And yes, there are people at the state who watch this, who look at what property sells for in a given community and then compares that to the tax digest and see if they're in line. What the state wants you to do is stay as close to that 40% figure as possible. All right. They want property to sell at around, its assessed value. All right. Now, what's happening here, and I can speak to this from what's happened in my neighborhood. All right. What's happened is over the last few years, property has sold for more than what the assessed value is. And at some point, the state looked at it and said, listen, you guys need to reassess. What you have on the books and what your properties are selling for are not the same thing. Now, in my neighborhood, and I mentioned this the other night, we've been in our house for 23 years. We have probably been there, I think we have been there in our immediate area about as long as anybody has. All right. And all our houses are about the same size. They may look a little different, but they're all about the same size, on about the same size lot, and they're going to sell for about the same amount. All right. And as people have bought and sold around us, we've noticed that the property values, the sale price has gone up significantly compared to what we originally paid for our house. Our home was reassessed in this new reassessment cycle, not quite double of what it was, but pretty close to it. And I told you this the other night, our house was assessed at $121,000. It went up to $228,000. Not quite half, but close to it. Now, most of the properties in our neighborhood have sold for more than $228,000. All right. So one of the ways that you can tell if your assessment is in line or not is when you look at it, would you sell your home or sell a particular piece of property for what it's assessed at? In my case, my house is $228,000 on the tax digest. But property around me, comparable houses to mine around me, have sold for much higher than $228,000. All right. So in that regard, my assessment, while higher than what it has been, is probably still a little bit too low. Okay. But when the property sales are twice what the assessed value is, you're not paying taxes on 40% anymore. You're paying on 20%, and the state's not gonna let that happen. The state penalizes counties if you're not around that 40%. You can be at 38, they're not going to say much. You can be at 41, 42, they're not going to say much. All right. We did a commercial reassessment right before the hurricane, I believe. We were getting ready to do the second reassessment, the residential reassessment, when the hurricane hit. So we were given some grace to postpone the reassessment till we halfway got things put together. Now, there are a lot of people who still haven't recovered, a lot of houses that are still damaged. How that factors into the assessment, I do not know. Someone asked me that. I don't have any idea how that works. These are getting into some technical questions that are best answered by someone who has more information than I do. All right. But that's why the reassessment has been done, because our tax digest, collectively as a community, we've been paying, our taxes have been figured on about 20% of our assessment as opposed to 40. So what this new assessment does is bring us back in line to that 40% number. Now, within that and under that umbrella, the state will not allow a county to raise taxes too much. So for the sake of the numbers here, let's say your county budget is $10 million. And I don't know, I don't remember what our county budget is. We've done some stories on it, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Say it's $10 million. All right. And your property values get reassessed. And if they did the taxes on the property value, and this is probably too big of a number, but if they collected the taxes on 40% of all the property in the county, it would be $20 million. Okay. The state's not going to let the county double its budget like that. It's not going to happen. There are going to be some controls in place to make sure that the total amount collected is only a certain level above what it has been. All right. And they do like a 5-year average or something, I think somebody told me, over what the county budget is. And then they allow a little bit of an increase. It's not a cost of living increase, but it's something similar to that. Okay. Because we know that fuel goes up, the price of equipment goes up. The county's always buying vehicles and buying excavators and front end loaders and backhoes and dump trucks and pickup trucks and things like that. All that stuff goes up. So the county does have to raise a budget in order to keep up with the increase based on equipment and based on materials and things like that. But there are some controls in place at the state level to keep it from getting out of hand. So when you do reassessment like this, one of the things the state does, it says, look, you're going to have to roll your millage rate back. Now, we talked about this the other night too. Assessments go up, but the millage rate has to go down to keep the amount of taxes within a certain level. Now, that's not to say that they won't go up. They will, but they're not going to go up what you think. All right. And I did the example of my house. My taxes may actually go down. Now, the key is to have your home and homestead exemption, or to have any agricultural land that is eligible to put it in a conservation program. You get a tax break on that. If you don't have your house and homestead exemption, if you don't have any agricultural land in conservation programs, you're going to get hammered. Okay. You're going to get hammered. So that's where this 45-day appeal comes in, which I believe expires on September 18th. So if you don't have your house and homestead exemption, if you don't have your agricultural land in conservation, you need to appeal it and see if you can get that taken care of, and you can get a big tax benefit off of that this year. So that's when the millage rate, or why the millage rate is going to get rolled back. How much will it be rolled back? I don't know. All right. That remains to be seen. After all this other stuff is done, after we get past September the 18th, then the county will begin to talk about that. All right. So that's kind of what's happened here. The state has gotten involved and said, you have to reassess your tax digest. Now, there are private companies outside companies that do the reassessments. The county didn't do it, right? There are outside vendors that do that. And how they figure it, I don't know. I don't know what they look at. I don't know the criteria. Looking at what property sells for in your area is a part of it, but there are other criteria as well. And I don't really know what those criteria are. But that's why we did a reassessment. The state said you've got to. Your community has collectively been paying taxes on about 20% when it should be paying on 40%. That's a state mandate. That's not a county thing. The county's got to do it or the county gets penalized. Now, there are a lot of conspiracy theories about how this stuff's figured, about what the county's going to do with the money. A lot of people think that's just going to be, the county now has a blank check to charge whatever they want to charge and collect as much tax money as they want to collect, and so on and so forth. Now, that's not the case. I want to get to our tower cam in a minute, but before I do that, I want to come back and wrap up with this. I want to take a quick break, but there's one more thing I want to mention about how you can keep up with this stuff and how you can stay informed throughout the year, so when these things happen, you don't get caught wondering why this is being done, where your money's going, so on and so forth. So I want to get to that in just a second. But first, let's take a break. We'll be right back. Looking for design, printing, or shipping solutions? Stop by PostNet in Douglas or Waycross today. From business cards to signs and all small business and personal print projects in between, we've got your back with our full-service printing capabilities. We offer custom packing and shipping options through UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service, so you can always choose what works best for you. A car accident can have serious consequences far beyond the initial crash. Your life and the lives of your loved ones can be turned upside down. Missed work, lost wages, totaled vehicles, and insurance companies that don't want to help. You need a law firm that will fight for you. You've come to the right place. Welcome back. Robert Preston Jr. here live on DouglasNow.com. Now, I wanted to take a break when I did because I wanted to look something up. All right. We did a story. A story here is dated December 6th of last year on the county budget. All right. And the county budget's a little hard to follow. All budgets are. But the general fund for the 2026 budget is $23.2 million, basically. All right. It was an increase of about 3.9% over last year. And the state allows, the number I keep hearing is about a 3%. The state allows the budget to increase a couple of percentage points each year because things go up each year. All right. And again, a lot of this stuff is due to employee salaries, benefits, and things like that. Nothing costs more than paying people to do the work within your organization. Most of a budget, about 75% of any budget goes to paying the personnel to cover, to cover the work of that program. So you're looking at about $23.2 million for the budget. We went through a little bit here on some of the things that the budget covers. You've got a special revenue budget, which includes SPLOST money, the insurance premium tax fund, and FEMA funds. This year, that budget's significant. The budget's over $57 million, but about $30 million of that was FEMA funds. A lot of the rest of it is SPLOST funds as well. So that's a little bit different than the general fund. Now, this is what I want to get to. 702 people read this story. And that does not include the number of times, because when I post a story, I have to click on that story several times in order to do so. So a few of these clicks were mine. So outside of what I had to do, and again, clicking on this story now adds, a view to it. So fewer than 700 people read this story about the county budget. So nobody gets upset when we talk about the budget. Nobody gets upset about a lot of these expenditures about the county business. And we have not done stories the last 2 county commission meetings. I've been out of town on, but I have 1 meeting a month. I was out of town both days, both first Mondays. I was unable to be at those meetings. All right. But when we do stories on the county commission, people don't read them. People don't look at them. All right. And they actually did discuss this in the county commission meeting on Monday morning. People don't read the stories. People don't go to the meetings. People don't pay attention to what happens until something like this goes on. And then everybody gets upset and everybody wants to know, well, where are we spending our money? What's going on? Why do we need this much money? What's the budget? What's this and what's that? We've covered it. We talk about it here. We talk about it on Douglas Now. I'm not being snarky here, but I am being truthful. The information, a lot of what you need is out there. You can access it readily. You don't have to wait until something like this happens to get upset to start asking questions. You don't have to wait till something like this happens to get involved. One of the reasons that we write the stories that we do, that we cover the news that we do, is to try to give people information they need when these kinds of things happen. All right? And I've always felt like, I might be wrong, I'm having to wear glasses now. These are not rose-colored, okay? They're cheap Dollar General glasses. But I've always felt like both our city and county governments, and you want to throw the school board in there as well, are pretty transparent with what they spend their money on, or our money on. All right? They're pretty out in the open. They do a pretty good job, I've always felt like, of handling our money responsibly. All 3 have a pretty good bit of money in reserves. They're able to carry out their duties and tasks without being, without running in a deficit. And that's not the case for a lot of the communities around here. There are a lot of counties, or not, I don't know, several counties around here whose county budgets are always iffy each year. All right. I know there were a few comments about, wasteful spending. That's why we needed to increase these assessments, that kind of thing. All right. I would imagine if you went through that budget with a fine-tooth comb, you could probably find something in there that people wouldn't like. Okay. But overall, I've always felt like we did a pretty good job as a county of handling our money. All right. So do I like the fact that the assessments have gone up? No, I don't like it. I'm not happy about it. I wish it didn't happen. But at the same time, it's another one of those things that is going up. And I'm not trying to excuse it or be flippant about it, but you look around, everything is increasing. Okay. It may not be related to inflation, not the inflation that we had over the last few years, but things aren't going down. The prices of goods and services are not decreasing, and they're not going to. Okay. And that brings us around to another, how do we fix this? How do we close the gap? That's when you hear the talk about affordability, when you hear some of these grandiose plans that some of our more progressive political candidates have that they promise will work, and they won't. And I have some material I want to talk about. There are 2 areas in our society right now, today, that you can look that invoke leftist progressive policies and ideologies, and they're both failing. They're both failing spectacularly. I'm going to keep that as a cliffhanger. The next time we meet, we're going to talk about that. I don't want to give up all of my material in one night. So we're going to talk about that moving forward. Not tonight, though. So my idea, and I'm going to explore this a little bit, It seems at least something we should look at. The way to close that affordability gap, I think, is for wages to keep up with GDP growth. Okay. Our GDP has grown significantly over the last 30, 40 years. Our wages have not. Economic growth has outpaced wage growth. And if our wages kept up with our GDP, maybe not even dollar for dollar, but a lot more than what they are now, then we wouldn't have these affordability issues that we do. We would not be looking at the government to solve our problems. Private business would be solving a lot of our problems because they pay us more for the work that we do. And I don't get raises either, okay? I have been at both of my jobs now, basically 3 years, and I have not gotten a raise. I have not gotten a raise and don't see one on the horizon. It ain't coming, all right? It ain't coming. And a lot of you are in the same boat. So this is kind of one area I would like to look at a little bit more. Let's get wages to catch up with GDP. Then maybe we could find ourselves on a little stronger footing. But that's the story behind the tax assessments. In short, you need to be paying, I say you, a community, the way the state sets it up, a community should be paying taxes on about 40% of the assessments. And right now in Coffee County, we've been paying on 20%. So the state came in and said, your assessments are off. You got to fix it. And it's unpleasant, and it's painful, and it hurts, just like everything else. But the way to find out if your assessment is in line is ask yourself, would I sell my property, my house, my farmland, my timber, whatever, would I sell this for what the assessed value is? And if you say no, because I want more money than this, then even though your assessment increased, it is still low. If you say no, it's too much, then your assessment is too high. And if you say, yeah, I would sell my property for what it's assessed at, then it's probably about right. That's the way you can ask yourself that question and figure it out. All right. But as an aside, a lot of the information regarding where the county money goes, we publish. Certainly the county makes it available. When they talk about the budget is on the table. You can go to the county commission office, which is in the courthouse annex, and you can take a look at that budget, and you can see where every dime is spent, and you can ask questions. And you can dig as deep into it as you want to. All right. And that's kind of one of the things I always shake my head at. We try to do a good job of putting this information out there for people to see it. I bet most of you don't even know that we did a story on the 2026 budget. You don't know that the general fund was about $23.2 million, special revenue fund at over $57 million. You know, you're looking at the total money the county operates off of, or is operating off of this year at around $80 million between the two funds and the disaster money that's coming in and that kind of thing. You had no idea about that. You don't have any idea how you just see your assessment go up and then you get mad. And I understand that, but there are ways to have a greater, I think, understanding of where the money goes and why it's spent the way that it is and what the need is for this. So again, I'm not apologizing. I'm not speaking in defense of any of this. I'm just telling you why it's happened, and also instructing you nicely and in a gentle manner that a lot of this information is out there, that you can inform yourself and keep up with what's happening and where the money's going if you will do so. We try to put it out there for you. So again, when we find out, if we think things are going bad and things aren't operating the way that they should, we look into it. But that's the story behind the assessments. I know people are mad. I know people are upset and they don't like it. But there is a little bit of recourse, and it may not be as bad as you think. Now, some people it may be worse. Renters, or excuse me, landlords who have rental houses. I don't think it's going to be very fun for you or your renters. Okay. But again, you got to wait till that millage rate rolls back and see how it all plays out. It may not be as bad as you think. Our tower cam, we got our 4 lights. It's dark outside. It's hot. Y'all be careful. Everybody be careful in this heat. It is hot. It is nasty, and it's going to be that way for a while. Deer hunters, it is deer season in the Everglades. Would you like to be deer hunting in the Everglades right now? The Everglades is a harsh environment anyway, but to sit in a tree stand, I don't know how they hunt down there in the Everglades. I don't know if they use tree stands, blinds, whatever, but they've got mosquitoes year round down there. Would you imagine being in the deer woods right now? I don't know what you wear. A lot of my deer hunting stuff is cold weather. It ain't cold down there. But interestingly enough, let me leave you with this. The reason that deer season is going on in the Everglades right now is because the rut is kicking in. They have an early rut down there. The rut is not determined by temperature or by weather. It is determined by when the does go into estrus. And in the Everglades, they go into estrus early so they can have their fawns before the spring rains come. The mamas don't want to be having babies when the water's rising and they'll drown. So they have to get pregnant. They have to have their babies before it starts raining in the spring. So while it's still 6,000 degrees and mosquitoes the size of pterodactyls are flying around down there, that's when the rut kicks in. So the rut is based upon when the mamas need to have their babies safely. And down in South Florida, they have their babies earlier in the year to beat the spring rains. So right now, deer season is going on in the Everglades. I just say that to say, I would hate to be deer hunting in this kind of weather right now. I love to go deer hunting. It's a lot of fun. And I did a little bit last year. I'm going to do more this year. I used to hunt a lot. I quit for a few years, but my kids are wanting to get back into it a little bit more. So we're going to hunt some this year. And I really enjoy spending time in the woods. But if you're down there in the Everglades, you're chasing deer. You're also dodging water moccasins and crocodiles and rattlesnakes and alligators and Burmese pythons and Nile monitors and some Nile crocodiles and, a few exotic cobras that are found down there every year. The more I talk about it, the more it seems like it might be kind of fun. Maybe I would like to go down there and go hunting. Don't kill a deer, catch a couple pythons. Be a good way to spend a morning or an evening. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you next time.